Today we are going to talk about how to set up Shopify server-side tracking using Elevar. Elevar integrates really well with Shopify. You can push data layers using the app and set up the whole tracking using their platform. The setup is very streamlined, and I'm going to walk you through the process and some of the things you need to be careful of. Without further ado, let's get into this video. I'm going to do an overview of the process of setting up Elevar and key differences between this setup and an alternative. I did the example of Cloud Run. The key difference is that there are some extra steps that you need to take for manual installation. For Cloud Run, you need to set up a custom domain where you will map a server-side tracking domain that works with your main website. And the goal is to set up the server instance where all the tracking on the server side will work. You set up tags on the web container and then you forward them to the server. And then from the server, this is basically like a middleman between your web container and the final platforms. So the server will send data to Google Analytics and so on. With Elevar, some of the steps are removed. You have an app like any Shopify app that you install. You import templates, and then maybe you can even add your own templates if you want in the Google Tag Manager container, the data layers, and so on. And then the data will be sent to the destinations. What you need to do is to install the app. Okay, now let's give it permissions. We need to go through each step and set up the app. Let's go to the plans, and you can see here that there are a bunch of options. Since we are just doing a test, I'm going to select the free plan, and then I'm going to click on this one to approve any charges for my monthly invoice. This is really where we will start setting up audio tracking. There will be more sections as we go through the video. I'm going to click on this button right here to set up tracking. I'm going to use my Google account. The next thing is setting up your web container. We talked about why you need only a web container for Elevar. There is no server container. You select it from the drop down and then click on confirm and save details. In the second step, you can see that we have some sort of a dashboard or a summary of your data sources. What we need to do is to set up the Shopify store before moving to the destinations, which are basically the different apps you are going or platforms you are going to set up. Let's get started. Link our website, use the GTM ID. So for consent mode, you need to pay careful attention to this. You need to make sure that you have an active consent mode integration and use one of the apps that are integrating with Shopify without much of manual changes on your end. So what I typically recommend is to use an app called Pendictis. If you don't, just make sure that you have a good alternative that works well with Shopify. I'm going to talk about the consent part later on, but in this option for setting up consent mode, I'm going to click on yes. There is a warning by Elevar because if you are not careful with this one, your tracking might go down in the maybe the checkout pages if you are using some sort of workaround that I see often in some setups. So I will enable the consent mode. I will just make sure here that I have no GTM scripts in the checkout pages or in the customer events section. So this is how you will do it. You go to your store, and in the online store section, you go to your themes, you click on the three dots, and then you click on edit code. So in the theme.liquid, which is the default file that will be opened, just hit Command F or Control F if you are on Windows and look for GTM ID if there is one. So I have a script here that I used for customer events. I do not need it for the setup, for example, and I will just remove it. If you have any script that is related to GTM, for example, the script we use to install the container, make sure it is not there anymore. And then you click on save. Make sure you go through all the files. Sometimes there is one in the snippet section. So make sure that you find anything that is related to GTM and comment it out. Once this is sorted out, you go back to the dashboard and you click on mark as complete and continue. Now we need to add this one as the custom pixel. I will click on copy to clipboard. I'll go back to my store, go to these settings, and then under customer events, which is below domains, you can see here that I have one for order tracking. I will just edit a new just so you can see how I do this. I will name it exactly what they want it to be named, which is Elevar checkout tracking, and then go back to my store, name it. In the code section, you need to copy this part right here, paste it, and click on save. In the permissions, here you need to mark it as not required. Therefore, the data collected does not qualify as data cell because sometimes this part or this script does not work as expected, and it is recommended to have this setting right here. Click on save and then go back to the dashboard. I will mark this as complete. In the last part, we need to verify that our script is actually working. So what I do is that I toggle this off and then I toggle it on, wait for it to load and click on save. Go back and then it will be verified. Now we go back to the tracking. I do not have personally any non-Shopify subdomain pages, so I hit no in this case. Our Shopify is configured. There are some destinations we can set up. I will start with GE4. Now I'm going to show you an example of how to set up your GE4 ID using Elevar. What I do recommend that you follow is that use a station ID for deploying your first tags because things might not work and you don't want to pollute your main property with false data. I will start using a fake GE4 account in quotation before moving to my main property. The first step is basically to just copy your ID right here and then go to Elevar, edit, save and continue. And then for events, just use the best practices. What it will do is that it will show you a list of all the events that are sent via the web. Only the purchase event will be sent via the server, as you can see here. And this part is very important. If you enable the purchase tag and the data is being sent via the server, you will get duplicate conversions. So you want to pay attention to keep this tag right here paused. It will be paused by default, as we will see in the next section, but this is a common mistake I see across clients where the purchase tag is firing along with the server event, which causes duplicate conversions. Click on save and continue. So for consent mode, you need to make sure that consent mode is enabled. So enabled for this destination, you can send anonymous data to G4. This is basically advanced consent mode. If the user denies tracking, you can still send anonymous data to the server. The check will send data if there is ad storage and analytics storage that are granted. If not, the anonymous data will be sent as pings. You click on save. For the transaction ID, just leave the default order name. Click on save. For the product identifier, keep it the same as well. For filtered transactions, you need to filter some transactions. There is some best practices that are recommended by Elevar for certain apps to avoid creating any sort of conflict with your backend. For subscriptions, if you are selling subscriptions products, you click on yes. In my case, it's no, so I'll click on no and click on save and continue. And the good thing about setting up tracking with Elevar is that there are some pre-built checks that you can download and use in your own web container. You just click on the button right here, and then you go to your GTM in the admin section. You go to import container and then select the JSON file, open it, the workspace, and then you select merge. And you can overwrite any kind of existing setup if you are starting fresh. If you don't want to cause any issue, click on rename confliction tags and triggers and variables. Now we have a bunch of tags for the full e-commerce tracking aspect. You can see that the purchase tag is paused. Again, I'm going to repeat this warning because I see it a lot. If your purchase tag is being sent via the server, which is why we typically use Elevar for sending high priority events or conversions, just make sure this one is paused. If you are not using Elevar to send the purchase tag via the server, you can enable this one and you won't have duplicate conversions. I will keep it as is. This is again my ID for testing. I recommend use a staging ID to avoid any sort of issues with quality of the data. I will make sure that my ID is working. So just search for G for ID. Here you should see it in the results. I'm going to just search for it. Here it is, select it. So this is the ID that is used across all my tags. Just make sure it corresponds. I'm going to submit, name my version, GA4 staging property, for example, and add any notes if you are working with teammate. Publish. So as you can see now, we published the Google Tag Manager container. We are still not live yet, just because you can see here that the GE4 integration is not live. So you won't see actually any data here. What we need to do is to make sure that consent mode is working as well. The next steps will really depend on the consent management platform that you happen to use. I'm using the Pendexes consent management platform. And in Google Tag Manager, what you need to do is go back to your workspace, go to tags, and then hit the new, go to the template gallery, and then you will search for Pendexes consent management tag template. Add it to your workspace, and then in the option for URL pass-through, you need to enable it if you are interested in persisting the ads data. I will keep everything as is and push a custom event just in case I need it in the future. In the triggers, I will select the consent initialization option here and hit save. So that's pretty much it. I will hit submit, and then I will name this CMP push, for example. I will go live with my tracking and go to the dashboard, click on mark as complete. I will start going through the website and see if everything is working as expected. Okay, so now our Elevar destination is live, and what we need to do is to basically do some basic testing. You notice that I published the container. This is because in Shopify you cannot test the actual setup before publishing. I will just go through the website and see what is going on in the data layer. I have an item here. I will just open the extension right here that I use for debugging. The first thing you should know about the data layers that are pushed by Elevar is that they are prefixed by DL, and then you've got the name of the actual event. For example, the number 6 and the number 7 data layers are pushed by Elevar, and we've got all the information we really need in the object. So we've got the e-commerce object here with the products information, and that's basically what our tag in the tag manager backend relies on to fetch the data. For example, for view item, when I open this, we are sending the items data, which is the JavaScript that basically gets the product information. We've got the currency in the value of the cart. All of this is handled by Elevar. You don't have really much to do once you import the container. So I will start seeing the events as I browse through my store. I will refresh the page. I will add the product to the cart. And my goal really is to trigger as many events as possible. And I'm seeing some few item events. And what you really need to do is to just make sure that you are getting all the parameters. Of course, this will take some time because you won't be able to see all the values in the return report. So what do I recommend is that you push the G4ID to production and then do QA once you've got enough data flowing in the different reports right here. So once you've got the e-commerce reports filled, you can do the analysis and find anything wrong with your setup. Once you validate all the events, you can move to the other destinations progressively and finish your setup. I hope this video was helpful, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next